Welcome to episode 31 of the LorainCounty.com Business Insights Podcast. I'm your host, Ed Skimmon, and today we're talking with Mike Doran, candidate for Lorain County Recorder. Join us as Mike shares his motivations for seeking re-election, his focus on improving office efficiency through technology, and his policies benefiting local businesses. He also discusses his experience in the role, his approach to customer service, and the challenges of implementing new systems like credit card processing. This episode is part of the 2024 Candidate Spotlight Series, aimed at providing an additional way to learn about local leaders running for office. Before we get started, I wanted to share a quick disclaimer. Both of the companies I co-founded, Emerge Inc. and LorainCounty.com, have professional relationships with some of the candidates, and I also count a few of them as personal friends. To ensure fairness, we invited all local candidates to participate and record an episode completely free of charge. Each candidate running for the same office was asked the exact same questions, and aside from removing any unnecessary sounds and long pauses, we kept the editing to a minimum. For a full list of local candidates and issues, visit loraincounty.com/election. And on election night, visit loraincounty.com for real-time election results. Here is my conversation with Mike Doran.
Mike Duran. I am the sitting county recorder running for re-election.
Welcome, Mike. Thanks for joining us and sharing your insights. To start with, what motivated you to run for Lorain County Recorder?
I've had an interest in property and those kind of things for a while. I was looking at getting into real estate. I saw this was coming up for election, and I was like, I think I could do that job. So then I went through. I have a past management experience and IT experience. I felt like it was a management of people job and also a knowing how to choose different vendors and that kind of stuff, because all the records are online. Everything goes through computers nowadays. So it's like, can you manage the systems and can you manage the people? I thought, hey, I can do that. So I put my hat in the rink and I won in 2020.
Can you outline your main priorities if you're re-elected Lorain County Recorder?
If I'm reelected, my main priorities is to continue doing what I've been doing. I have over 1 million documents that we've had scanned. The scanning process is a lot more involved than you would think it is, because like when you want to grab a piece of paper and you scan it at home, you're just like, okay, I scanned it, I put it in there. That's pretty simple and it seems really easy. But what we're doing at this scale of millions of documents, it has to be scanned, and we have that part done. So we have everything scanned. And then you could argue and say that it was indexed because technically, yes, the books that they wrote the indexes on between 1824 and 1996 are there and they're indexed and they exist and they're online. The other thing that we want to do moving forward is actually get those searchable the way that you search it right now, where you would type in a name and be able to find that way.
A lot of our listeners are business owners or business managers. How would your election and the implementation of your priorities benefit local businesses?
Local businesses, just like anybody else, take out loans on their properties. We keep the mortgages easily searchable for the title companies. So it makes it less time, hopefully, for you to be able to close a loan if you want to get out some equity, whether you're taking equity out on the property that your business owns, or some of these business owners are maybe expanding and pulling out equity of their home to do something in that. So it depends on the different level of business and what they're doing. A lot of them would know that making things more streamlined and easy is the way to go forward.
You've alluded a little bit to this, but what role do you see technology and innovative practices playing in the future of the Lorain County Recorder's office?
I definitely alluded to this a couple questions back, and that is we are at an interesting place right now with technology because we're on the cusp of all of these AI things, and everybody thinks that these computers are getting really smart. What it is, though, is we're programming all of these algorithms. When you get onto this AI chatbot, it's trained to recognize patterns, to recognize things. So it can say, I guess the next word of the sentence is going to be this. And eventually it does seem like you're talking to a person. I don't have any implementation for that type of version of AI where like a chatbot type thing is not anything that we would really use much in the recorder's office. But other versions of machine learning and those kind of things. For example, I was talking a little bit earlier about getting these millions of documents indexed that are from 1824 to 1978, I believe, is as far back as we go online. We go from 78 to current that we have indexed where you can just type the name in. So on the flip side of some of these newer technologies coming around, we have actual computer programs that can read this sheet of paper and determine what the words are on it. It's like an OCR or optical character recognition, but they try to call it intelligent character recognition. And then there's also handwriting recognition. So I can look at these old documents that are actually written on copper plate with copper plate style and be able to translate those relatively accurately online. So rather than the hundreds of thousands of dollars that it cost to index those manually, we're taking a little bit of time to see if that technology is going to come out in the next couple of years rather than us spending a few $100,000, $500,000 on outsourcing to get these things done and indexed right now. We would want to save that money because they are indexed. It's just not indexed the best searchable way. It's not a top priority need, but it's definitely something that we would like to do, we would want to do. So us finding somebody who had that technology implemented and for us to be able to use it with those intelligent character recognition and an intelligent sentence recognition, knows what a deed is, those kind of things. We could actually get those things more easily searchable online than we do have right now.
What trends do you see in Lorain County, and how would you like to see local government and Lorain County Recorder's Office adapt to these changes?
Lorain County is, I would almost say, like everywhere else to a point. We can do a lot of the things that everyone does everywhere else. And one of the things that I'm moving to adapt is we are starting to take credit transactions and those kind of things, which is something maybe I should have tried to implement earlier. But with the pace of government, you have to get approvals. I can't just jump out and say, okay, this is the credit card processing system we're using and we're going to start it tomorrow. I probably could do that, but then you're stepping on other people's toes. Like you've got to get input from the treasurer. You've got to get contracts signed. You've got to send the contracts through the prosecutor's office. One of the contracts was 80 something pages for a credit card processing agreement. So I was like, I can read this and I know what these words mean, but I've also known enough about lawyers to know that they change the definition of the word and it means something else when it's in a contract. We send all that over to the prosecutor's office and let them do their thing and check it out. And then that was a long process, actually, even just getting that credit card processing implemented. It was just, they send a contract through, it goes between the prosecutor's office, and then it goes over to the vendor. Then the vendor changes what the prosecutor told him to change. And then the prosecutor's office comes back to me and says, hey, is this what you wanted it to mean? Because they translate it back into normal speak from the legal speak to me. And I'm like, yes or no, depending on where that was at. Because I don't get to make up rules in my position. I'm not a legislator. I have to follow the rules that are made down in Columbus. So we have to make sure that we're following them the right way and the way that we believe that they were intended to be implemented.
In your Lorain County Recorder's Office, how do you define success? What metrics do you use to measure your progress towards success?
I would argue that we have the most efficient office in the county based on customer service ideals is where I measure this, because a lot of times you don't think of the government as customer service because you're like, the government works for me, I'm the voter, that kind of thing. But the way I like to measure that is if somebody calls into my office, they call 329-5148, right? After 2 or 3 rings, guess what's going to happen? Somebody's going to answer that phone and say, Lorain County Recorder's Office, this is whatever their name is. How can I help you out? And they're going to call in. They're going to ask you about why the property value is too high. And we're going to go, we can't help you out with that because we're not the auditor's office. What we can do is we can transfer you to somebody up there who can probably be able to help you out. Or if somebody comes in, they're getting their documents recorded and recorded on time. So that's how I like to measure success, my idea. And then the other thing is just going out into the community and asking people, the title agencies who are coming into my office every single day, is this working for you? What would you like to see better? And sometimes what they would like to see is impossible. And other times it's stuff that we can implement right now. So just being able to get out there and talk to them, communicate with them as to what they need, how I can do it. And if it's something that I can't do, I've also got to communicate that to them. Like, I can't do this, but would this work? Give an option, because sometimes somebody wants you to do this over here, and then it's going to break something on the other side. So you've just got to make sure that you're able to appease the people to the best that you can, but also make sure that you're not just appeasing people and screwing something up somewhere else.
Let's switch over and talk a little bit about you. What's your background prior to becoming recorder?
Before I became recorder, I was working IT consulting. I was doing a lot of installations of POSs. I was also a diesel mechanic at Cisco Foods. We were Teamsters over there. I was management in a lot of different places. So that was what I was going back to in the beginning with managing people and being able to do it, because that's what a lot of these jobs that we're hiring these people for, whether it's me or the commissioners or the sheriff. It's a lot of being able to effectively manage other people to get them to do the jobs and those kind of things. I was at Best Buy for a little while. I was working there doing stuff. I went to LC and got their real estate certificate. I felt important for this kind of path because it's not a really long certificate, but it goes over the legal aspects and goes over everything else, and it helps you figure out what's in the industry, those kind of things.
In your professional career, what are you most proud of accomplishing?
The thing I can think of the most recently was when we were able to switch the system over really quickly. We had an issue with one of our vendors getting hacked, and we were able to get everything switched over safely for everybody without too many hiccups. There were definitely some hiccups, and nobody's perfect. Anybody who says that they could have done it without, I would love to see them try. But we were able to get that switched over with as few hiccups as possible and get everything back in line and moving and everybody back up and operating. And we switched from a single server that was running for us, and there were 187 other counties on there as well down in Columbus, and there was no backup. There was a backup somewhere else, but there was no fully redundant backup. There were offline backups that we had to use to get our new system into place. But we were able to face that adversity, still continue recording while we were completely down. We're still assigning people numbers and getting everything recorded while the system that we normally use is non-existent due to a fault of a different company. So what we ended up switching to was something that we have on site, and we have cloud as well. So the cloud is the primary, so that way it's easier. So we're not tying down the county's infrastructure, and we're using the cloud's infrastructure for that, but we can always fall back to either the other location of the cloud or another instance in that same location, because there's roughly, they told us like 30 instances. I didn't like dive in to look to actually count the instances, but I trust the guys if that's what they said it was.
Outside of work, what are your hobbies and interests, and how do they help recharge you?
I'm a car guy. I like wrenching around on my cars, fixing them, those kind of things. I've got like 10 cars now. We put them on this little platform to rent them out, so it doesn't cost us as much because I don't make a ton of money. It's not like I have 10 cars and they're all like Lamborghinis or something. No, I've got like a Volkswagen and Chevy and a Jeep or whatever. But it's nice. The Jeep's actually really fun. They're a lot more customizable and stuff than I thought. I knew people customized them, but like, yeah, you can customize any car you want to if you're willing to tear this off or move that there or anything like that. But when you get into these Wranglers, you've got a little plastic panel, you can pop it off, and then there's like screws so you can mount stuff or you can make up stuff, or 500 different companies sell these things that you can put on your Jeep and you can make it different. You can change the top from being a hard top, switch it to the soft top. You can take off the top. You can have no top. You can take off the doors. You can put on other kinds of doors. It's just like fun, that kind of stuff. And then I've also a little bit of a computer guy, and I've got my kids. My 14-year-old are always like building random computers here and there. He's like, can you get me this graphics card? And I'm like, no, that's $2,000.
The last question, what else should voters know about you prior to voting in November?
I'm the only candidate for this position that has experience in the office, that knows what's doing. And the only one that I know will continue with all the progress that I've been trying to make. I'd ask for everybody to vote for me so that I can continue doing the progress, get everything indexed like I was planning on doing, just to finish the implementations. I don't think that one term was enough to finish all the things that I started. And I did notice, being here for the last 4 years, you can go through and you can see where some projects were implemented, and then you can see when the recorder switched and maybe the project wasn't quite finished. Like we had some microfilm, for example. It's not something we use all the time anymore, but there was a microfilm project and everything was microfilmed up to a point. But there's a big gap where they didn't rescan an index book. We had this miscellaneous index book, and it was supposed to be microfilmed all the way until they stopped using it in, I think it was right around 96 or so is when they stopped using that book and went online. So it was only microfilmed up to a certain point. And then this was one of the books that was being used a lot. They were using it all the time. Like every day you'd have 10 different examiners. So every day for the past 40 years, this book has been opened and looked through who knows how many times. So could you imagine what this book looks like It's got little corners missing from the pages and you've got all this kind of stuff. So we scanned this book and then we were like, let's check the microfilm images for the most recent one to see where it is so that we can get a better image of this to have this on our scan. Because any scan that we make today versus the one in the microfilm image, what we do is we compare those two images. So I'm comparing these two images and I'm like, well, where's the most recent scan? Because this ends at 1986 or whenever it was exactly. And then I'm like, where's this going? And then it turns out the last time they scanned that book was at the end of somebody's term. And then the beginning of the next term, they didn't say, okay, hey, we need to remember and go back and get that on film as well so that we have everything. So you'll notice that when you start projects and you want to get them finished, you've got to be the one to finish them. And it's nothing wrong with the next recorder that came in after that. It's just that they may have had another vision and didn't realize that they needed to still go back and scan, put those into the microfilm because they weren't there at the time. And maybe some of the people also changed over, so you don't really know.
Finally, where can people get more information on your candidacy and connect with you?
So I have a website. It's mikedoran.com. And my email address, anybody can go ahead and send me an email. It's mikedoran@mikedoran.com. My cell phone number is 440-282-MIKE. You can text me or call me. I feel like you see a common theme.
Thanks, Mike, for joining us and sharing your insights.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the LorainCounty.com Business Insights Podcast. We hope you found this conversation informative and that it provided some ideas that will help your business continue to grow. Please follow us on your favorite podcast platform to hear each episode where we shine a spotlight on local resources that will boost your business. And we want to hear from you. Email ed@loraincounty.com to share your feedback and topic ideas.